As followers of Christ, we are faced with new norms and societal changes that may differ from our worldview. We see fads continue to shape not only our culture, but our beliefs as well. Are we following the trends of life, or are we seeking after the deeper truths which God places before us? We'll discuss these questions and more in Trend or Truth.
Hey, happy Easter there from Jeff Lasornio, or Zorn, as I hope most of you will call me by. But glad to be here again. We've got another podcast we're going to run through. We're going to be talking about today. I don't really know how to word it because important isn't the phrase I'm looking for, but it's should Christmas or Easter be celebrated more passionately, or does that make sense? So again, it's kind of the usual cast. Right here I've got one of our OGs from the Church of the Nazarene, Wes Hostler.
He is risen.
Nice. And then also from Real Life Church, and one of our baseball guys up here on the hill, Corey Murphy.
Yeah.
And then the guy that does all this magical stuff and makes us sound good, or makes us sound better, I guess. We kind of limit him on that, but also a student at Rogers State University, and he goes to Church on the Move, and his name is Maeson Phillips.
How's it going?
So I kind of really didn't know how to word what we were going to talk about today, but I think that's it. Is just kind of, well, first off, what are some of the traditions that you guys may have in your family for Christmas? Let's start there. Like, for instance, one of the things that we do at our house is every Christmas Eve, we open one gift only, which was when Kimberly and I first started doing this. It was amazing to me because my mother never let you open a gift at all before Christmas Day.
Christmas Eve gift is always socks.
Well, we do pajamas. So it's your pajamas for the next year, I guess. But it's crazy because we never ever wear them because we all kind of want our stuff washed before we actually wear them. So it's really a useless gift on Christmas Eve. But it is still kind of one of the things that we do. And then we'll usually go to some kind of candlelight Christmas service somewhere if we can. So
one of the things we always do with Abby's family is we go to a candlelight service on Christmas Eve. And my family, I don't really know that we have a lot of quote-unquote traditions. Every year when I was young, my grandma, we would always open her gifts on Christmas Eve and then my gifts from my parents on Christmas. But I wouldn't really say that we had many traditions that we made sure to do every year.
Big one for me is we always open our stockings on Christmas Eve, and so we'll go through all those gifts, enjoy them for the evening, and then unwrap the presents under the tree the next day.
So you got your stocking before Santa ever even came?
Yeah, I didn't.
Impossible.
I never really got into the whole Santa thing. I mean, I think one year probably contemplated it, but it wasn't a big thing for my family.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't realize Santa could time travel until, we started doing that too. But, it's Christmas.
I'll never forget when my brother found out that Santa wasn't real. He went outside and saw a Walmart sack full of our stocking stuffed wrappers and absolutely lost it on my parents, like crying whole 9 yards about how they lied to him. It was a really big deal.
He wasn't like 19 or nothing like that when that happened, right?
I think he was 22. No, I'm just kidding.
Because I faked it. I faked the belief in Santa Claus for as long as I could because I was afraid that if I didn't, I wasn't still going to get the gift. Well, now I'm 51 and I still get Santa stuff from my mom, so.
Nice.
Hey, I love her for that. She's kind of what we're talking about, honestly, and I don't mean to be rude. She loves Jesus. She loves everything that the season stands for, but she was a Christmas freak, man. Yeah. I mean, her tree had to be perfect. You would give her a gift, and she would thank you for the gift, and when you left, she would go and wrap it in her matching paper that matched her tree and the rest of the gifts around the tree. She wouldn't do it while you were there, like, oh, this is terrible wrapping paper. She had gold bows and red bows, and so the packages had to be gold and red, and it was a big deal.
My mom's kind of the same way, okay. And I guess you could call this a Christmas tradition because my mom every single year would tell us, like, guys, Christmas is going to be it's not going to be as big this year. We're going to have to really
That's hilarious because my mom said the same thing.
We're going to have to rein it back this year, and then you'd come out Christmas morning and the living room would be full of presents because she just couldn't help herself.
Yeah.
So, like, you put the OCD or the Christmas and OCD or something like that, like Christmas OCD where everything has to look a certain way, things are symmetrical, like when you talk about decorations and people that so get into how the ornaments look exactly on the tree and everything that you're talking about has to match. And
that was always my least favorite part about the season was my mom making us go to the storage building and drag out the thousands of Christmas decorations that she had.
Well, I gotta tell the truth. I inherited my mother's ways. Not on the decoration part, but on the gift buying part. I would literally buy gifts, and I was the greatest gift buyer in the world. So if you got a gift from me,
self-proclaimed.
no. This is self-found is what it is. I took great pride in it. If you got a gift from me, it was at the very least going to be very well thought out. I remember when they started selling Whataburger spicy ketchup at Walmart, and I told my buddy Joey, I was like, you're going to love your Christmas gift. And he's just like, maybe so, I don't know. And I took it to him, and he was like, you are the greatest gift buyer ever. And it was like, $1.99 or something like that. But I knew that no one else had thought of it, and I knew that he loved that. But I also would last minute go out and just buy another $200 or $300 worth of stuff because I was afraid my kid wouldn't have enough. When my big transformation came, that year I went to the closet to play a game close to Christmas time, not Christmas yet, but close to it, and found 3 or 4 games that I'd bought the year before still in the cellophane, so that's when that stopped. But my heart for Christmas changed as well, though. So what about Easter traditions? What are some of those that you guys may have?
We always got together as a family and just had my whole family, not just my immediate family. My whole family got together, and we have kind of like a Christmas dinner, I guess. Ham and all the sides and stuff like that, and then all the kids hunt Easter eggs.
For my family, it's kind of changed a couple times. So we used to go to my grandpa's church around here in Claremore for Easter Sunday. Him and my extended family, we'd all go and eat lunch afterwards. And then after a while, when we got a little bit more involved with the church we go to now, we really just kind of plugged into those services, and it was pretty much just Easter Sunday service was really the only thing we did. So to be honest, there's really no tradition that went with it, just going to church on a Sunday.
Mine was definitely the dyeing eggs whenever I was young, in that we would just try to make the craziest designs and things like that, and this stuff, of course, that will stain everything, and you got little kids that are so messy knocking stuff over. But it was absolutely my favorite thing to do because my brother was pretty artistic. I mean, he was one of those people that could draw anything or whatever, but he would always come up with something new to one up last year as far as how he would design eggs or color them or do something like that. So as a little kid, I loved that. I couldn't really get into, the hunting was fun, but coloring and showing off our artistry on the eggs was a big deal.
My extent of artistry in painting eggs was I would take 2 eggs and I would dip them in different colors. And then when they were still wet, I'd swap them. So not only did I ruin the dye, I made like a brown egg.
That's awesome.
I know one year, I think I decided to hide the eggs in our house, and I forgot about one of them, and then we later smelled it.
Oh, nice.
About a month later, it's like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here.
So for me, we always had an Easter egg that was New York Yankee themed, no matter what. And it was never artfully done, but it was always done and was my favorite because it was Yankee. And my kids kind of got fun. They thought it was cool that we'd made something like that. They gave you the little wax crayon and you would make your design. So that was a fun deal for me, especially whenever I had kids. It was just a cool deal. But that's kind of the thing that I've wrestled with, especially since my big change 5 years ago, is those are cool traditions. Don't let me knock what your family's doing, but that doesn't sound like a celebration. You know what I'm saying? For Jesus dying on the cross, being resurrected, even if he dies on the cross without the resurrection, none of it matters, right? He's just a hoax, a fraud, what everybody was saying that he was at that time when they killed him. That's all he is, but he did resurrect. He was raised from the dead, and we treat that celebration not near like we do his birth, and that seems backwards to me. Does anyone else agree, disagree? And believe me, I'm tough. I can handle it. If you disagree, you can disagree.
I think in the world today, it's because Christmas is marketed. We're always going to be inherently selfish, and so people want gifts. And that's why Christmas is so over-marketed, because they get to wake up in the morning and open a bunch of gifts and have a bunch of presents that they didn't have before, and we want material things.
But that's kind of part of my frustration is why are there gifts, okay? Why are there gifts? Tell me why there are gifts.
Wes?
Why are there gifts?
Yeah.
You have to go to things outside of what Christmas stands for. Who is the personality of Santa Claus, right? It doesn't matter what culture you're from. They have a name for Santa Claus. I wish I could remember.
St. Nicholas.
Yeah. Well, yes. Now, if you're looking at the person that was St. Nicholas, that was a real dude. But when you're talking about all the names they give, Father Christmas, I guess that's in the UK. And then I wish I could think of all the other names they have. But each one has this particular tradition attached to it that may have started with giving to someone in need. Like the next morning, somebody in need that was desperate, you gave them a gift. And I think some of the oldest ones were gold coins that went down the chimney and supposedly fell in socks that were attached to a fireplace mantle. And that, of course, has got some myth or, urban legend attached to it. But the idea was there was all kinds of things that were twisted up to turn into materialistic stuff, exactly what Murph was saying. And so after a period of time, you forget about helping, a neighbor in need. You turn it into how much can you get for yourself? What are you looking forward to on Christmas morning? Is it all about the gifts, or is it about family getting together and bonding during a time when we don't go to work? We don't let all these other distractions interfere with family coming first.
Yeah, that went a totally different direction than what I thought, but that's really good. For me, it was, I figured the wise men brought gifts, so that was the tradition of let's bring gifts, But I feel like the gifts that the wise men brought were very specific and served a real purpose when they brought them. And I don't feel like the gifts that we give now. I like your way of Christmas. I would love Christmas like that. Let's find somebody that needs some help and let's help them, probably in an anonymous way. Thus the drop it down a chimney and it fall into a magic sock, or maybe not magic, so probably the wrong word. Probably should not use magic on this podcast as my phrase of choice, but I just did. So you're going to have to move on past that. So, but I just feel like that's part of the thing that been commercialized. Obviously it's when retailers say they go to the black for the first time, and then I just think it's I don't know that it would bother me so bad if we did that for Easter. Hey, I want to celebrate the resurrection, and I want to celebrate it in a mighty, mighty way. I did see some cool things this year where people were putting some red sashes over their doors and doing some things that I hadn't seen in the past. Maybe I had the wrong group of friends on Facebook or something, but yeah. So what else is there that's on the Christmas side is there anything else that might frustrate you guys, or am I alone in this? Am I the only one that thinks it's kind of a reversal of celebrations?
I do get a little bothered by how commercialized it is, and not necessarily the holiday, just nonstop. You can't even go to the grocery store without just being packed in like sardines because everybody's just buying everybody gifts. And I do love the generosity part of Christmas. That's the only time of the year that I know of that everybody is willing to go out and do something for somebody else. Even if it's their kid, they're still willing to go out and splurge a little bit and spend some money on somebody else to give them something that they want or maybe even that they need. But I hate how commercialized it is. But there's a certain joy around the time of Christmas. I think it's because everybody they know that they're getting gifts on Christmas morning. They know that they're going to get something that they want. And so there's just this, I don't know, anytime I feel like I go outside, there's just this feeling of joy. Everybody's happier. I don't know. There's just something about it.
I don't know what the statistics are about up or down, but there are definitely people that react the opposite way that you would think, because they're watching tons of people react to Christmas exactly the way Murph said, is that they're closer with their family, everybody's happy and joyful, and because their lives, because they don't feel like that, but because they don't get the warm and fuzzy feeling where they have relationships or family close to them, listening to Christmas songs and enjoying the Christmas spirit, let's just say that, then they get depressed because of it, because they can't make themselves get into the Christmas mood, and it really drives them deeper into depression.
Psychology Today said that people are most likely to commit suicide around Christmas time. False. Contrary to popular belief, the suicide rate peaks in the springtime, not the wintertime.
Yeah, I still think like what you're saying, though, is a valid statement that there is the opposite that happens where they see all these people in a joyful state and it only pushes them further into a depressive state. So that is a sad thing about that time of year for sure.
Absolutely, but I think it's a real thing that certain companies can capitalize on the mood aspect, on the emotional involvement of Christmas. And they make people feel as though if you really want the Christmas spirit, then you buy my product. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what we should all find disturbing, is that whenever we feel closer to our family, and we're letting go maybe of some of the things that keep us so busy throughout the year, and allow ourselves to enjoy more time with family, or be grateful, or just the millions of different things that are good that come out of the Christmas season, to me, get turned upside down by trying to market it as a way to go into the black. Exactly what you were saying.
If you think about it, I mean, even on the business side, they value Christmas more than Easter because they give you Christmas Eve and Christmas off. I don't know a lot of businesses that don't give employees Christmas Eve and Christmas off. And I know Easter's on a Sunday, but they don't get like that Monday off or anything like that. I think that's kind of weird. Another thing that I think is weird, and I kind of have a question to follow up with it, is there's not really any decorations other than, like Easter bunny and all that stuff for Easter, but you'll see like nativity scenes and all that kind of thing for Christmas. Do you guys think that's kind of weird that there's not really any decorations for Easter?
There is, and also when you really look at it, a lot of the decorations, a lot of stuff that goes with Christmas has nothing to do with what it's really about. And same with Easter, the Easter bunny and everything. I don't remember reading about that in the Bible anywhere. So
Trend.
Well, that's part of what this discussion is about is, to me, if we're going to get excessive, the celebration should be about the resurrection. Personal opinion. It's not biblical. I'm not trying to say that it is. That's my personal opinion. So I get what you're talking about because I kind of fell into that commercialism. But what that brings to mind for me is we allow that with what our priority is. My priority was the selfish joy of seeing someone open a gift that had so much thought put into it that they could only be happy, that my kids could wake up and see thousands of gifts and be like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the greatest Christmas ever. And my focus wasn't on Jesus at all. And then, of course, when my focus changed to Jesus, I'd kind of set a high bar. And so like my kids were kind of like, man, this guy's terrible now, but I'm like, I'm not willing to fall back into that pattern. So the commercialism, I think, is a deal that we fall into because why is the season even there anyway? We're not doing it because of the gifts. We shouldn't be. It should be because of Jesus's birth. That's what we're celebrating. But then for me, it always goes back to, well, the resurrection's where we really should be celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
So, question off that, where do you draw the line in showing your love for somebody by giving them a gift and going too far?
Well, I don't have any coins for you, but I have a greater gift. I have salvation. I have stories that can lead you down a path that might give you joy. I mean, you've led a person to Christ. How does that compare to buying them a pair of Beats headphones?
Yeah, it doesn't.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, once you do that, that's a different kind of joy. And provided that you didn't just lead them to Christ, you've tried to be an influence and disciple them in Christ. Now you get to see that joy on earth that you know is going to be everlasting, but you get to see it on earth as well. And then see them actually go and impact other people far exceeds the Christmas gift to me, type deal.
Everybody wants to be a hero, right? And I think that's a father thing, is that you want to be the hero for your kids. And that's just another way that you get to do that. You get to see their expressions on their face, the way that they react and, emotionally connect with you and stuff like that. But as the person that's supposed to point your children to Christ, once you get that, you point to Jesus as the hero. And it's a hard transition. It was definitely a hard transition for me to not accept that sort of gratitude or the heroic side. It's just like everything that is good in life, you constantly point people back to Christ instead of accepting that title yourself. And I think that's even how pastors get into that mode. Especially if you're pastor of a megachurch or something somewhere and you've got thousands of people looking up to you, it's real easy to sort of put yourself in that position where you're the hero instead of pointing people back to Christ. It's super easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah, definitely. So then, with all that being said, is there more that we should be doing at the Easter season? And what would that be? Make decorations? Make fancy decorations?
To me, it's the passion of the Christ. I can't overstate the significance the first time I saw that movie. And it was a big year for me. I have to admit that was the big transition year of my life, because it was earlier in the year where we go into my testimony, and I've told it before, that movie came out. So, I mean, it's crazy how all of that fell into one year for me. And just watching it portrayed in a realistic way. I know we've all seen
that movie was pretty believable.
Yeah.
Obviously I wasn't there, but the way they portrayed it, it seems like pain and suffering. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it changed how I reacted to Good Friday. It changed how much I took on the responsibility for Jesus being tortured. I mean, someone taking a bullet, because we always talk about that passage in John that no greater love
than to die for a friend.
Yeah, than to die for people that you care about. And dying in the aspect of taking a bullet. That's what I always go to, and I think a lot of my teens have related to that. Like, I could jump on a grenade,
quick and
take
easy.
a bullet. Yeah, instantaneous. And then you watch the slow process, the pain that he went through, the cat o' nine tails ripping flesh off. I mean, that whole thing, there were points where I felt it. I was so empathetic watching that movie. I was crushed like I was 5 years old. I kid you not. I mean, it took me down to a childlike state of so much regret that I caused this to happen to Jesus. And then, of course, the after effect of gratitude was amplified in 1,000,000%. Like, I've never been so grateful for salvation in my entire life than when I watched that movie.
That's a great point. It reminds me, too, other than the egg deal, that was our Easter thing, and still really hasn't been, even though my life has changed, I haven't changed that. But this year, Kimberly suggested that we do communion together. So we got some saltines out, got some grape juice, and alcohol-free family. Well,
now.
Yeah. But no, it was something that I hope we continue to do, but not because it's a tradition, but because of what it was. And that's one of the things that watching that little scene from Passion of the Christ, there's a YouTube video you can watch. It has some music in the background, and it's just that scene. And we've shown it at AMP a couple of times, and it is powerful. But that changed how I do communion now, because communion was a ritual. Communion was a tradition. Communion was, hey, let's do it in remembrance of me, and let's move on, and okay, we're going to, whatever. And now I can't do it and not go into a state of prayer of thanks and appreciation. And I know that this flesh was torn for me, and I got to let you know that I do remember that right now as I take this. And then the same thing with the blood. So it's kind of a cool deal that come out of it for us this year. So I'm really glad that Kimberly come up with that.
Yeah, I don't think we should really be separating the two, Christmas and Easter. I think it's better to look at the whole story, because why did Jesus come as a baby? Why did he come to earth as a human? So that he could live out that life, and that so he could be the sacrifice for us. So you really have to have both parts to present the whole reason why Jesus came back and what his journey was and why he had to go through all of that.
And another thing,
he does it every week.
Yeah. And another thing,
he convinced me. I'm like, yes, one giant holiday. Let's do it.
Another thing that we haven't even talked about is we celebrate Christmas as the birth of Jesus, but he was born in the summer.
I'm pretty sure that's all Hallmark's fault. I'm not positive. But.
Well, a lot of that was the Yule holiday already in place, and then so that non-believers would celebrate this at the same time as believers, they moved it, and that's why we have Christmas.
Wow.
Look at that. The Christians conforming to the world. Trend, not truth.
Trend, not truth. You said it. Send the hate mail to Corey Murphy, by the way. So I'm convinced. Maeson convinced me, and we went through all this. And then Maeson convinced me in really one little paragraph that they're both necessary and important. I do think when you were saying that, one of the things that come to my mind was, he was born an infant, baby, went through life. And then, to me, the suffering, he could have done that pain-free. But I think there was power in that for us to see and relate. And just like, he was tempted so that we'd know that he was tempted and that there's deliverance from all that.
Well, in some ways, it kind of makes us relate to God, even though it's very hard to do so. He wanted to go through something so painful and so terrible that whenever we have terrible pain, we know Jesus suffered worse than we did. So he understands exactly what we're going through, and he can relate to it.
That's really good.
And the tempting, all of it, his entire ministry made him fully human and made the sacrifice perfect. Because if he was never tempted, then, okay, yeah, he's a perfect sacrifice, but he never had to go through anything. He doesn't know what I'm going through, like you were saying. So I think that the tempting shows us that he was the perfect sacrifice because he went through everything that we went through and went through daily life, dealt with the things that we deal with, and overcame it all.
exactly what Murph said, and I wasn't thinking about the temptation in the wilderness before his ministry started. It was huge to me when I realized the first time that he had the ability to say no in the Garden of Gethsemane. That blew my mind. That everything that led up to that point, Christmas and everything we talk about, his whole life coming to a moment where he actually asks God, if there's another way to do this, can we scratch this part off? And that blew my mind, that he was that human to ask for a different way to do that. But he said, I love you, Father, too much, and I love the world too much to say no.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just super powerful. So I think basically what we've come to the conclusion is that they're equally as important. They were definitely necessary for us to be able to achieve our salvation, to be able to have the promise of everlasting life. And I'm just thankful that God works the way that he does. I've got some bad news. I'm kicking you guys out of here next week, and I'm going to bring in some of our ladies that are involved in the AMP station. And I also heard something. My daughter is a podcast junkie, and she told me that people will write people letters. And I was like, there's no way people are still writing letters. And she's like, yes, they'll write letters in these podcasts. So I dare you to write me a letter, to write any of these guys a letter, to write a letter to this podcast. If you'll write us a letter, I will snail mail back to you a t-shirt, one of our podcast t-shirts. They're going to be awesome. They're going to be huge. They're going to be amazing. That was my Donald Trump is terrible, wasn't it? I'm not even going to ask you to edit that. I'm just going to tell you, cut it out probably. I don't know why Donald Trump is appropriate on this podcast. But anyway, that was terrible. But still, you mail us a letter, I will mail you one of our podcast t-shirts.
But it has to contain something relevant. Can't just be like, hi, something relevant to the podcast.
No, I don't care. If you're gonna snail mail me a letter, you can literally just. That would be amazing.
So the only thing in the letter will be t-shirt size.
Yes. Okay. I need your t-shirt size and your return address.
Yes.
That'd be huge that you have that. But yeah,
we would prefer some feedback, criticism, ideas, thoughts.
I'm sending you a shirt. I kind of only want good criticism. I don't want to be beat down. Then we may be I've used magic again. We may be out of your size or something like that if you're not nice to us. So before we go here, my daughter, Addison Lasornio, sent me a couple of poems to use in my message for tonight, which you guys will be finding out about this tomorrow. So it's April 12th. I'm doing an Easter message, and I really can't find anywhere to put this in that'll fit with what I'm doing tonight. But I love her poems that she sent me. So I'm going to have Maeson read one of these to you. It's a perfectly fitting Easter poem. And this one that I'm going to have him read is actually titled, Your Name We Proclaim. She loves to write, is really good at writing. One of the reasons that I hope you'll go back and look on the AMP Facebook page is to see what I'm going to talk about tonight, what you would have missed tonight, but now... Man, this is getting this is getting that time-space continuum thing that we were talking about earlier. Anyway, the message that I deliver on April 12th is a super short one, and that you would go back to that because this is completely relevant because I'm going to talk about some ways that we use to keep our connection to Christ, keep our connection to God. And this is one of her ways where she does this. She explained it to me that it's her quiet time, but she doesn't like to sit idle. She doesn't like to sit and just alone with her thoughts, and this kind of helps her get through with her thoughts and kind of put them down on paper. So she wrote this a couple of years ago. She was going to Rogers State University, which she graduated from there since then. She was a paid writer for the Odyssey, and she was doing this stuff. So I just wanted to share it with you because it's appropriate. It's an Easter deal, and I wanted Maeson to read it because his voice is way better at stuff like that. So Your Name We Proclaim by Addison Lasornio. Hit it, Maeson.
All right. From the beginning, he knew what he was, a sacrifice. He knew his side to be pierced, his hands to bleed, his eyes to weep. He suffered for me. My sin was great, but he was greater. They spit, beat, and deemed him a fake. They crowned him with thorns and mockery. Humans at their lowest, earth at its darkest, mankind turning against their own creator. As his eyes fell weak, he gasped for air and made the final plea. My God, why have you forsaken me? I see those hands that bled for me, yet I weep in fear. I fear what is to come, where the Lord is taking me. I am unaware of the afflictions that may arise. I know that he will guide me. As long as it is on him, I fix my eyes. Praises rise to the one true King. who is in control of everything. None can compare to the Lamb who was slain. We find ourselves as we get lost in pursuit of your holy name. Our lives bare and weak, only in his name we find meaning and strength. He slays our desires. Instead on him he sets our eyes. Forever he is to be glorified, forever and always lifted high. The sun, moon, and stars cannot quiet their displays of praise, as all of creation cries, my God, be lifted high.
So that's a wrap for this episode. We hope that you've enjoyed it. Shoot us any kind of corrective criticism, ideas for shows, and we just thank you for listening to us.
Thank you for listening to the Trend or Truth podcast. This podcast is recorded out of the AMP station in Claremore, Oklahoma. AMP is a Christian ministry geared towards college students and young adults, with an emphasis on loving God, loving people, and making disciples. Consider becoming a subscriber so you don't miss a single episode. You can follow us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and we'll talk to you next time.